In the Republican camp, former President Donald Trump emerged victorious in the New Hampshire primary, primarily contending with Nikki Haley. Haley, not shying away from criticism, has pointed out the Republican Party's lackluster performance in recent elections under Trump's leadership. Despite pressure, she is determined to press on with her campaign, setting her sights on the South Carolina primary as her next battleground.
She recently challenged Donald Trump's mental fitness and demanded a debate-stage showdown. She criticized Trump for not providing adequate security during the January 6 Capitol incident and questioned his ability to serve again due to his age. Haley boldly stated that nominating Trump would lead to a Biden victory and potentially a Kamala Harris presidency, underscoring the high stakes of the nomination.
In a passionate moment, Haley's crowd echoed her criticisms, chanting that Trump is a loser. She attributed a series of Republican losses in the Senate, the House, the White House, and the midterm elections of 2018, 2020, and 2022 to Trump's leadership. Despite congratulating Trump on his New Hampshire primary win, she didn't shy away from pointing out his previous electoral defeats, signaling a tough stance against the former president.
Donald Trump gave a nod to Ron DeSantis for his support post-Iowa and brought up Vivek Ramaswamy to voice criticism against Nikki Haley during his rally. Trump has also been vocal about his disdain for the idea of non-Republicans, misleadingly suggesting they could vote in the GOP primary.
Disillusionment among former Trump supporters is becoming apparent, as Bruce Lariviere, who supported Trump in the past, cannot stand by him after the January 6 events. Meanwhile, Christian Fiore, an unaffiliated voter, has expressed that he'd choose Biden over Trump if faced with the choice, citing a threat to democracy.
The New Hampshire primary has seen its share of challenges, especially for Democrats who wanted to switch sides in protest but missed the deadline. As the Trump campaign pivots to issues like immigration and the economy, Nikki Haley's campaign continues to argue her stronger position in hypothetical elections against Biden.
President Joe Biden is gearing up for the upcoming general election with a strategic early start. Key moves include transitioning Jen O'Malley Dillon to the role of campaign chair and appointing Mike Donilon as the chief strategist. Despite challenges from figures like Minnesota Representative Dean Phillips and author Marianne Williamson, Biden secured a straightforward victory in the New Hampshire primary, indicating a clear path to the Democratic nomination for a second term.
Nikki Haley seems to have an edge in hypothetical matchups against Biden in the general election, though. Haley, resisting calls to withdraw, asserts that the GOP race is still wide open. Meanwhile, President Biden's campaign is laser-focused on abortion rights as a pivotal issue for the general election, setting the stage for what could be a high-stakes rematch between Biden and Trump.
In his recent speech, former President Donald Trump made the misleading claim that Democrats were permitted to vote in New Hampshire's Republican primary. This assertion is inaccurate, as the rules only allowed registered Republicans and independents to participate. Furthermore, it's noteworthy that about 4,000 individuals previously registered as Democrats changed their affiliation to either undeclared or Republican by October 6, ahead of the primary.
Trump also erroneously stated that he has consistently won New Hampshire, extending to general elections. However, the facts tell a different story. Trump lost the state in both the 2016 and 2020 general elections. Regarding voter affiliation, it's common for states to permit switching parties before primaries, and some states even have later deadlines for this than New Hampshire does.
On the topic of taxes, Trump's assertion that Biden plans to quadruple taxes is baseless. Howard Gleckman, a senior fellow at the Urban Brookings Tax Policy Center, clarified that Biden's tax plan would raise taxes by an average of $2,290, not to the exaggerated extent Trump suggests. Additionally, Trump recycled his unfounded claims about winning the 2020 election and allegations of widespread election fraud, for which there remains no evidence.
Nikki Haley's campaign seems to be on shaky ground as she struggles in states that are now considered Trump bastions. Despite this uphill battle, her supporters, like Lisa Kent from Connecticut, remain hopeful, likening her gaining support to an avalanche. Trump's recent bitter demeanor and outbursts might be pushing suburban and women voters away, which could play into Biden's campaign strategy.
Haley, at her election night event, acknowledged Trump's win but emphasized that the race is far from over, a sentiment echoed by her supporters chanting, "Trump is a loser." Trump's reaction to his New Hampshire victory appears to be one of frustration, especially towards Haley's decision to stay in the race. His victories in Iowa and New Hampshire, despite his legal troubles and controversial tenure, demonstrate his remarkable political resilience.
Donald Trump is making unprecedented strides in the Republican primary race, effectively consolidating his influence over the GOP despite facing numerous legal challenges and the fallout from January 6. He publicly criticized Nikki Haley for remaining in the race and encouraged his political aides to intensify their attacks on her. Trump's success in the early nominating contests marks him as the first modern-era non-incumbent Republican to achieve this feat. Even after her defeat in the New Hampshire primary, Nikki Haley remains steadfast in her campaign, vowing that the race is far from over. She's up against significant challenges, especially in the upcoming South Carolina primary, where Trump currently leads in polls. Political pundits are skeptical about the longevity of her candidacy, especially considering her recent setbacks, but Haley's resolve appears unshaken.
And so our coverage of the New Hampshire primaries is over. Now let's see what the people are. Just saying.
During a recent event in Laconia, New Hampshire, Donald Trump's rally was notably disrupted by hecklers. One incident involved a woman calling out for the release of the January 6 prisoners. Trump confidently assured her, responding directly with a "we will."
Adding to the rally's tumult, a man from the crowd chanted a QAnon slogan, eliciting recognition from Trump with a smile and a nod. Amidst the chaos, the crowd's mood turned sour as another individual was escorted out, attracting jeers and shouts of "loser" and "bye-bye" from those in attendance.
The rally continued under a cloud of interruption, which seemed to irritate Trump. He was heckled yet again, leading to an exasperated reaction where he acknowledged the heckler's return. These moments of contention were emblematic of the rally's charged atmosphere.
Trump's rally speech in Laconia was a whirlwind of confusion, marked by his slurred speech and lack of coherence. He also oddly referenced himself in the third person, a gaffe that did not go unnoticed by the audience.
The Biden campaign, seizing the opportunity, has intensified their scrutiny of Trump's cognitive abilities. They spotlighted instances of his slurred speech on their social media, alongside Trump's perplexing remarks about the Iron Dome, painting a picture of cognitive dissonance.
Trump's New Hampshire primary speech stayed true to his signature rally form, a mix of disruption and disarray. A notable slip-up occurred during his discourse on the death penalty, which was just one of several puzzling statements made throughout his address. "Keep sticking it to Orange Jesus Nikki until he clutches his chest and drops dead on live TV. Then you can run against Biden and lose."
Even if she loses, the true test of her concern for democracy is that she not support the Orange Jesus. Not like Sununu, who claims if OJ nominated, he is voting for OJ. Just despicable.
I have always wondered, so you lose, then support OJ? Do candidates turn over their donor lists to him? Point is, they donated to support her, not the OJ.
If it's already over, then whatever are we going to argue about for the next 10 months?
Reality is, nearly half of the voters don't want Trump, and those that don't want him can't stand him. That is mainly GOP voters. When independents and neutrals are taken into account, Trump goes back to just over 40%. Same as 2020.
Trump is one conviction away from disaster, out of 91 charges. Haley just needs to hang in. Their loss.
I'm a lifelong Democrat and I say this without one shred of doubt. Haley would smoke Biden in a general election. In fact, I don't even think it would be close.
Stupid fascist idiots. Thank God they're so inept or they'd be a bigger threat.
This is insane. Elsewhere I read that many of those dotards voters will see him fit for the presidency even in case he is convicted for his many crimes. How bizarre.
With 3% of the votes needed to win the nomination, the race is already called by the mainstream media. Joe Biden was far behind at this time in the 2020 nomination cycle. The press should just shut up and let the process run its course.
33,000 out of 290,000 is not decisive. Trump's poor showing in New Hampshire.
Read the results in the context of next November's general election. Robert Reich, January 24th.
Friends, as I noted earlier today, the mainstream media is falling over itself in seeming awe of Trump's powerful campaign.
The truth is just the opposite. Last week, he won fewer than 3% of registered voters in Iowa.
Today he won just 53% of the vote in New Hampshire's Republican primary, to Nikki Haley's 45.9%.
A 7% margin is nothing for him to brag about, although he'll brag.
For a former Republican president, his showing tonight in New Hampshire and last Monday in Iowa is pitiful.
Trump and his surrogates will undoubtedly try to spin his relatively poor showing in New Hampshire by pointing out that many of the voters were independents rather than Republicans.
But that's exactly the point. Even if Trump dominated Haley among Republicans, he did terribly among independents, which portends problems for him in the general election.
Trump will of course be the Republican nominee, but he's likely to be an extraordinarily weak candidate in the general election, given that almost half the entire U.S. electorate is independent, while only 25% are Republican, and 25% are Democrats.
Trump's base adores him. Most of the rest of America is justifiably afraid of what he might do with a second term.
Current delegate count, DT, 31, NH 16, with 1215 required to win. If Haley had won New Hampshire instead, the delegate count would be something like DT 28, NH 19. Basically this was a rather weak performance by a former pres.
Almost half of Republicans in NH don't want a former incumbent president to get the nomination. That's unusual and huge. The press should be objectively reporting Haley's surprisingly good performance. Why are they trying to crown Trump after just 2 of 48 states have voted? Do they want to curse America?
The wealthy corporate heads want a dictatorship. They want to turn America into another China. They are tired of going overseas to exploit the labor camps of czars. They want to be rid of the EPA, minimum wage, unions, etc.
Today's ridiculous wealthy have zero patriotism for America and only bow to the almighty dollar.
MSM is owned by the most wealthy of us, and root for the one they know will help them. As if they need it. Greed is exactly like addiction, they never have enough to satisfy them and they don't care who they hurt to get more money.
54% is really not a strong showing for a de facto incumbent. Trump can be beaten. Vote blue.
Just goes to show that the majority of Republican voters prefer treasonous criminal rapists. Go figure?
Well, as Trump said, I got 55% of the vote. No one has ever got 55% of the vote before, you know. They said it couldn't be done, but I did it. They were all wrong and I was right. And Nikki, just drop out. You are a loser. That's what I like about Trump, his grace in winning and his quiet humility.
Just about everyone thinks the headline, Trump beats Haley decisively in NH, closing in on nomination, is absurd. Change it.
That's a pretty good score indicating strong reservations within the hillbilly vote. Ideally we should have a brilliant athletic young candidate to charge in and take advantage.
Wait, what? All this verbiage and Trump only got 3 net delegates. How is that decisive? Run Nikki, run. The loud, noisy, annoying emperor has no clothes and he's fat and wears makeup.
Decisive? The Post perpetuates the Trump myth by not acknowledging how strong Haley's results are. She got nearly half the votes against an incumbent and presumptive nominee. Have the courage to speak the truth, you know, not in the darkness.
So, Haley cut Donnie's lead in half in NH compared to Iowa, but his win was decisive?
Decisive, because he was 11 points ahead? Really? Ridiculous. Headline could just as easily have been, Haley surges toward Trump in NH, do better WAPO, and stop enabling this monster. Also, please stop implying TFG has this all wrapped up because he won 2 primaries in 2 small, not very populous states. It's ridiculous.
How is 11 delegates to 8 delegates decisive? True, 11 greater than 8, but not by a lot. The Post really wants to tell a story of an invincible Hulk Trump, but real life keeps getting in the way. Sorry guys, no matter how much you boost him, he'll never like you.
How can 163,355 people be so dumb? Seriously? A man who has been found guilty of sexually abusing women and a potential convicted felon becoming commander-in-chief of our military. I'm beginning to wonder what the definition of the best and the brightest is.
Which begs the question, why? Do these disaffected simpletons actually know? Seriously? Sure beats me. Google it. There are over 1 million registered voters in New Hampshire. 303K plus are registered Democrats. 298K plus are registered GOP. Just under 400K are registered as independents. Approximately 165 to 170,000 turned out in 2024 to vote for Trump, giving him approximately 55% of the vote.
By comparison, in the 2020 NH primary, 129,000 Republicans turned out to vote for Trump, but he received 84% of the total GOP primary votes. Bill Weld received fewer than 12K. With considerably higher turnout in 2024, and in spite of DeSantis's endorsement of Trump, Nikki Haley did very well, taking 40 to 45% of the vote of NH Republicans who showed up. Participation was higher than 4 years ago, because more people are waking up to the high stakes of this election. As a woman, in an election when abortion will very much be on the ballot in every precinct across America, Nikki Haley remains highly viable.
Full disclosure, I do not support Nikki Haley because of her foolish pledge to pardon Trump, whose many crimes, lies and offenses have left a trail of damage across the nation and indeed the world, in Afghanistan, and in Ukraine, and in Central America, and in the USA, especially because of his countless pandemic failures and Jared's profiteering. I find the media outlets that are attempting to help Trump's propaganda machine churning out lies sickening.
We all lost someone to COVID. Are you not ashamed of yourselves, pretending Jared did not attempt to make money off the PPE demand, and pretending Qatar did not throw Jared a couple of billion into the Trump-Kushner begging bowl, and pretending Trumps did not engage in lucrative secret deals with China and Putin via hundreds of not-so-secret accounts known to exist, and pretending Trump did not walk away with all kinds of national security secrets, and was not implicated in the January 6 insurrection for which he has been indicted and is being prosecuted? That Trump is a candidate at all reflects how many Americans have taken leave of their senses, and how many more admire lawlessness and war criminal dictators whom Trump praises.
Scott is another fake Christian.
Trump has successfully created an entire alternative reality for his base, who lack the critical thinking capabilities to see it or to understand what his second term will do to America. They won't get it until he sticks it to all of us, and then they'll wonder how it happened. It will be up to the rest of us who still believe in American values and ethics to prevent it.
And his base doesn't care about critical thinking capabilities. They're mad as hell, and they're not going to take it anymore.
WTH WAPO? Trump underperformed polls by about 6 to 7%. Haley should stay in the race while Stinky Stalin is crying in his beer. Can we claim the voting was rigged, like Trump does when he loses? RIP GOP.
The dark side of small d democracy prevailed this evening. At least China doesn't ever have to worry about rogue members from the despicable wing of society ever taking control of their country. Over here, someone like Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, John Wayne Gacy, Richard Ramirez or Richard Speck could be elected president as long as they have an R at the end of their name.
WAPO trolling yet again with a ridiculous headline. Hope this helps.
Decisive. I don't think so. Haley didn't end up with 20% or 15% or 10%. She had 46%. That ought to be a serious shock in Der Fuhrer's camp.
He'll just double down on the gross mispronunciation of her name. That always works with his fans.
Trump's double-digit win in NH is really decisive. He won by double-digit almost by 12 part, while CNN poll predicted Haley is within a single digit. This was the most difficult state for Trump because he never won it in general election and 10% of Haley's voters were Democrats and others were undeclared independents. Rest of the nomination for Trump is now just cakewalk.
Stinky is the de facto Republican incumbent and he barely got 50% of the vote.
English MF, do you speak it?
I understood it, didn't like it, but I got the point, weak as his was. Why, after 2 small states, does everyone say it's over? Ridiculous. Most voters haven't even voted yet.
11 to 8. Trump took 11 delegates compared to Haley's 8.
That's winning, decisively. It seems pretty close, especially for someone who's running for a second term.
The only certain conclusion from this nomination is the bad news for the GOP. The MAGAs are fronting with a candidate that a clear majority of the full electorate finds detestable. There will be many surprising changes of seats after coming general elections this year.
Can't believe I am saying it, but I wish Chris Christie was still in the race. Sigh.
Me too. He behaved honorably since breaking away from the Trump delusion. I will never vote GOP and I'm well aware of his history, but he spoke and continues to speak the truth.
Just as we've thought for some time, the GQP is wedded to Trump by a relatively marginal group of fanatics. It tapers off quickly when you leave those culty corners, and that won't win you swing states in a general. But swap him out for Haley within the next few months and the MAGA minions won't show up without his name on the ballot.
Let's keep making these losers lose.
He strikes me as stupid.
He is clearing the field so when he dies, very soon now, very soon, any Democrat has a clear path.
And T mocks Haley's victory speech, while he's still claiming that he beat Biden in 2020?
11% difference is not, decisively, WAPO. Anything better than Trump. Haley got around 40% of the vote. That is substantial and in no way a lost position. Don't sensationalize, please. The serious media like yourselves pretend to detest Trump, but at the same time it seems you want him to win because it's good for your newspaper sales.
A double-digit win margin was deemed decisive for Trump going into the primary. Not saying the experts have never been wrong. However, Haley winning even a single one of the primaries going forward, including her home state, would be considered an upset. If you want to sell newspapers, nothing beats an upset.
Well, there you have it, folks. This is what people are thinking. January 24, 2024. Have a terrific Wednesday.